Well, hey, ladies and gents, welcome back to the next episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. Glad you're here with us. You know, this is the best place to hear some of the best true crime content you're going to find anywhere. Most of you already know this. I have a guest on each episode so you can hear firsthand, real-life, true stories of heroes in action. I love it. I'm talking about our law enforcement professionals, our military veterans, and our first responders. This is where you'll hear about their dedication to duty, their commitment to excellence, their bravery in the face of danger, and the sacrifices they make to protect all of us. I mean, that's what they're there for, right? Most of these guests, they're not looking for recognition or any personal glory. They go and do a job they love, a job which at any time could cost them their lives. And they do this for people they don't even know. You know what? And most times they're never even going to know. This is what makes us here on Game of Crimes different from so many other true crime podcasts, having the people on to tell you their story from their perspective. This isn't just Murph getting on here, reading some books, doing a little research, tell you somebody else's story. You know, quite honestly, that would be a whole lot easier and a lot quicker. But again, that's what makes this podcast different from many of the others, isn't it? As an added bonus, and you know this too, we'll occasionally hear from a former bad guy on this show. I know that sounds a little weird, but it gives us a different perspective. It gives us a look from the criminal side of the bars, I guess, right? So anyway, sorry to go on there for a minute about the show, but I'm very proud of our guests. I appreciate them giving us their personal time, to teach us, to enlighten us, to entertain us for a few minutes. And just to make sure you know, none of these guests are paid to be on the show. They just do this out of the goodness of their heart because I ask them to. I'm more than happy to promote their books, their websites, businesses, charities, whatever they want to promote, but that's all they get. So to all our prior, current, and our future guests on Game of Crimes, as Gomer Pyle used to say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And let's not forget our listeners, a big thank you to you as well. Game of Crimes would cease to exist without you guys. I understand that you're giving me your time to listen to these fantastic stories, and I don't take that very lightly. You remember when Morgan was still on the show, remember what he used to say? We can replace money, but we can never replace time. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't say that enough. As always, we have another outstanding guest for this week's episode, Mr. Peter Lapp, a retired FBI special agent who worked in counterintelligence. And I'll tell you a little bit more about Pete here in a few minutes. Got to get the housekeeping out of the way first. If you would, head over to Apple or Spotify and hit those 5 stars for me. It really helps with the ratings, and it helps to support Game of Crimes, and it only takes you a minute or two to do that. So I'd appreciate if you do that. Continue to send me your comments and feedback. You can do that on Spotify or on our website. I'll give you that in just a second. I do enjoy hearing your thoughts about the show, and especially about the guests. Occasionally, I take your comments and forward them to the guests so they know how much you appreciated them. I mean, you guys send in some really nice things on some of our guests. So, okay, so speaking of our website, check it out at gameofcrimespodcast.com. If you haven't visited the site yet, that's where you find all of our episodes, our book list, our merchandise. Going to be some more stuff on there. We're getting very, very close to having some of the new Game of Crimes merchandise available really soon. In fact, I'm hoping to have the first few items available by the time you hear this episode. So again, that's gameofcrimespodcast.com. For social media, on Facebook and Instagram, you can find us at Game of Crimes Podcast. And if X ever decides to let me start posting on there again, you can find me at Game of Crimes. I don't know. I don't know why they won't let me post anything right now. And it's not just Game of Crimes. They won't let me post on DEA Narcos either, but we're working on it, trying to come up with a solution. Also on Facebook, type in Game of Crimes Fan Club. That's a private group that's on the Facebook platform. It's run by our favorite queen, Sandy Salvato. Let me tell you now, she rules with the iron fist, but she wears a velvet glove. And what I like about that, it's not all about the podcast. These people, they come on, they put a lot of photo posts on there. They put a lot of good comments. They look out for each other. If somebody's having a rough time, you'll see a lot of support on there. It's just a good place to go have some good, clean fun. If you try to get too far outside the bounds, the queen will smack you down and you might not get back in. But come over and check us out. Now, if you want even more content, come over to patreon.com/Game of Crimes. As I've been saying for a few weeks now, Patreon is on hold, but I'm working to have it back open around June 1st. So that may already be up and running by the time you hear this podcast. I'm putting this out a little early or I'm having it loaded so that I'm out of town next week. In case I have travel problems, this will still come out on time. So I've received a lot of comments that our Patreon supporters want me to bring things back. So be careful what you ask for, okay? Patreon is where I get a little more opinionated about most topics. It gives me a chance to get up on my soapbox and pontificate about a few things. I guess some people will call that bitching, right? But I'm pretty sure you'll hear things there that you won't hear anywhere else. Things like, we've got one section called "You Can't Make This Shit Up." It talks about stupid things that criminals do. We've got a section called the Narco Meter, where I'll watch a law enforcement movie and we'll discuss it here. Another section called 911. What's your emergency? What's your emergency? Boy, I'm talking like a country boy, aren't I? Now, that's where I'll play a 911 call and I'll give you little tips and tidbits and leads, and then you try to figure out what really happened. That seems to be real popular. We have case reviews in which I'll discuss anywhere from 1 to 4 different criminal topics. We're going to have a section called current events, which is similar to case reviews, but it may include more timely topics. And then the monthly Q&A, I really like this. This is where you can ask me any questions about just about anything. And on top of that, I'm considering another couple monthly episodes on Patreon. So we'll see how that goes. On the Q&A, I'm asking for your questions now. I've received quite a few from you already, but I always welcome more. If we get too many, I'll carry some over to the following month. But you can send those to me on patreon.com/gameofcrimes. or at the Game of Crimes email address, which is gameofcrimespodcast@gmail.com. Okay. A quick disclaimer. This is a show about crime. We talk about bad people doing bad things and bad people doing bad things to good people. I do take our stories very seriously, but you know what? I rarely take myself serious. If you've heard it before, I'll continue to say it. It doesn't hurt to have a little laugh here on the show. You know what? If it's what's wrong with having a little chuckle about some of the crazy things criminals do and what the cops have to put up with out there? That means it's time for Small Town Police Blotter. Okay, so here we go. First story comes out of Fort Pierce, Florida. Got to get Florida in there, right? So here's our story. A handcuffed 73-year-old man somehow was able to forcibly now throw a cheeseburger at a police officer, leading to the suspect's arrest on felony battery charges. Really? That must have been an old stone cold cheeseburger. Police responded Wednesday night to a Wawa convenience station in Fort Pierce, Florida, in reference to a subject being present who previously trespassed. Since the trespass was still active, police arrested Joseph Delaney and placed him in handcuffs. An officer reported that during the detainment of Joe, he was holding half of a cheeseburger. After being provided demands to drop said burger, he refused to do so. After the handcuffs were placed on him, Joe forcibly threw that burger into the police officer's right leg. The cheeseburger struck the patrolman, leaving behind burger residue on the thigh of the lawman, who, by the way, survived this attack. Joe was charged with trespassing, which is a misdemeanor, and battery on a law enforcement officer, which is a felony, for getting hit by an old rotten cheeseburger. He's locked up in lieu of a $10,000 bond. Now, listen, don't feel sorry for Joe. He has a lengthy rap sheet that includes convictions for attempted murder, fraud, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, and in 2022, he was arrested for allegedly attempting to strike a police officer with a metal pole. So, I don't know that I would ever charge somebody with hitting me with a cheeseburger, but I guess Joe asked for it. Okay. Next story comes to us from Portland, Oregon. A scissors welding nutcase told police that his wife, get this, Taylor Swift, yes, the Taylor Swift, directed him to attack a man on a Portland street. Cops report that Brent Thixton, 43, was acting weird and menacing passersby Sunday morning when he began to chase victim Andrew Rice. As Rice ran from Thixton, the alleged assailant swung at him with what appeared to be a knife. Investigators noted that Rice, the victim, suffered a small laceration on his back. Wow, this guy is a wackadoo. When officers apprehended Thixton, he said that he sought to stab Rice because, quote, my wife told me to kill him. That's when he identified his spouse as Taylor Swift. Asked about the 28-year-old singer's whereabouts, Thixton replied, We are one. Fixed to steal. He stopped answering police questions after telling cops he had a top secret clearance. I don't know why he felt compelled to tell them that. I used to have a top secret clearance, but it's not something I don't think I would tell a police officer when I was being arrested. Charged with an assortment of felonies and misdemeanors, Thixton is being held in the county jail in lieu of $277,500 bond. What a strange figure. I mean, why not say 270,000, 275,000, 300,000? Why 277,500? You got me. It's Oregon. What can I say? It's just amazing how many goofy criminal stories are out there, aren't they? You know, Morgan, before he left the show, told me about some websites where I found these stories. There's no shortage of material. Okay, let's get on to today's episode. And as I mentioned, our guest is Peter Lapp. He's a retired 22-year veteran of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Plus, he worked as a uniformed police officer in Pennsylvania for a few years before joining the Bureau. As you're going to hear now, once Pete was in the FBI, he wasn't real happy about being assigned to the counterintelligence section in Washington, D.C. He did want to go to Washington. He's going to tell you the story about that. But he really didn't know anything about counterintelligence, and quite honestly, I didn't either. Just so you know, this is the unit that tries to find, they unveil, and capture spies working within the borders of our country here in the United States. And the spy that Pete helped to capture, well, her background and her story will almost certainly surprise you, I think. To be frank, not only did it surprise me, but it really ticked me off. Just wait till you hear this story and wait till the end of the story, what's going on with her today. Now, I'm going to talk more about that when we do the outro on this after Pete's second episode. It just gives me a chance to vent a little bit because, you know what, hats off to Pete for what he did and the way he handled this whole thing, because I'm not sure I could be quite as gracious. And I don't want to give any more of the story away here, but it really, really makes my blood boil. So, you know what time it is now. It's time to get in, sit down, shut up, and hold on. Here we go again with the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the Game of Crimes. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Game of Crimes with Murph in the morning. This is your favorite person, Murph. I don't know how the hell I got that name. Maybe because my last name's Murphy. But glad that you came back. You obviously are gluttons for punishment, as I mentioned previously, but I love it. So welcome back. We have another, like I say every time, another special guest. I found out about our guest today through an author. And this is back when my co-host Morgan was still with us. As you know, we lovingly refer to him now as the traitorous bastard. He took over that title because he left the show. But he was contacted by a lady named Kelly Kennedy. Kelly is a former military person that served in the Middle East. She did her time over there. I think she was in the military for 6 years. And then she became a civilian journalist. And her claim to fame, I guess you would say, is she's the only female civilian journalist that served in combat in the Middle East and then went over and reported back in the Middle East, reported on it. So that lady, we are going to get her on here at some point. But when Morgan talked to her, she introduced us to two guests. The first one was Adam Gamal, and if you remember, that's episode 138 that came out on March 25th of this year. Adam, that's not his real name, was a member of what everybody refers to as the unit. Never heard of it. It's supposed to be the most secretive special operators in the U.S. military. So it was a hell of an episode, and his book was fantastic. I hated the redacting, but saw a little bit of redacting in today's guest also. So the second person that Kelly introduced us to is a gentleman by the name of Peter Lapp. We call him Pete. Pete is a retired FBI agent with 22 years service. He worked in counterintelligence investigations. And Pete, brother, I just want to welcome you to the show. Thank you for coming on Game of Crimes.
Thanks, Murph. I appreciate you having me on. And Kelly Kennedy is like a total, I think we can say this, badass.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's just start it that way. She's a total sweetheart and a badass at the same time.
There you go. So for all our listeners, you will be hearing her story down the road. But excuse me. Today, when Kelly told Morgan, and then Morgan told me about what Pete was involved with, I got his book, and it's called Queen of Cuba, an FBI agent's insider account of the spy who evaded detection for 17 years, almost as long as Pete was in the FBI. but she was already up and running by the time you got there. But before we get into her story, we will talk a little bit about your background, Pete. If you can, in a Reader's Digest type version, give us some information about where you grew up, your family dynamics, schools, sports, other activities, getting put in jail when you're a young man, anything like that.
That's all been expunged at this point. Kelly, and I give Kelly a whole lot of credit for encouraging me to open up about myself in the book. Her thought process was, the reader's going to want to know who Pete is and what made Pete Pete. Mm-hmm. So the Reader's Digest is that I grew up mostly in the great state of New Jersey, and oldest of four. Mom and dad. Dad was a teacher, really, really intelligent guy. Mom is one of these empathetic nurses, Mother Florence Nightingale kind of thing, where she's taking care of everyone. And mm-hmm. We moved to the Jersey Shore. And that's where I went to high school. And I started in 1984 as a freshman, but in 1986, I'd already been taking guitar lessons. And Eddie Van Halen kind of inspired me to pick up a guitar. He would later inspire me to put it back down because I couldn't make the noises that he was doing. But MTV and the Jersey Shore as a musician, you were either a Bruce Springsteen guy who was a little bit older than I was, a little beyond my generation, or you were a Bon Jovi guy. Mm-hmm. And 1986, the Bon Jovi "Slippery When Wet" was blaring down the boardwalk of Seaside Heights, New Jersey. And as my friend and I were cruising, looking at all the sights and people watching, the Bon Jovi album was hitting, and that's what I wanted to be. That I wanted to grow up and be a rock star on stage, and I lacked a tremendous amount of talent and good looks and capability. So, John Bon Jovi Jr. is safe. He has yet to be, still found. And then I went to college in Pennsylvania, met my roommate Joe Ashman, who wanted to become a Maryland State Trooper. Mm-hmm. And obviously, as a new driver in the state of New Jersey, I had noticed the New Jersey State Police. You were became very good at picking them out, and they had really, really professional uniforms. They were very sharp, always kind of comported themselves incredibly professionally. And when he said Maryland State Trooper, I was like, yeah, that'd be okay. Well, maybe if the rock star thing doesn't work out, I could become a police officer. And the story goes, my father lost his job. He was teaching at a nuclear power plant. He was teaching engineers how to make sure they don't melt down the plant.
Well, that's a good thing.
So yeah, it's a kind of a good thing, and it's kind of he had a physics degree as an undergrad, so kind of in that really, really smart category. It's hard being the son of a guy who teaches people how not to melt down nuclear fission. It's like your homework was never good enough. Yeah. And he lost his job. And he said, you might want to think about ROTC because I just lost my job. And this is my Thanksgiving of my freshman year of college. And I had to start thinking about the Army and ROTC and the National Guard. And that following summer, between my freshman and sophomore year, I spent at Fort Benning, Georgia. It's been renamed, in the infantry school, going through basic training as an infantry private E2, and came back college and contracted as an ROTC cadet. And then 3 years later, I had a degree and a commission and was a second lieutenant in the Maryland Army National Guard. And that really got me into the concept of service and, kind of working towards things that are bigger than yourself, being part of that national security kind of calling, if you will. And it changed the course of my life. It really did.
Yeah. Before we go too much farther down there, when you were in high school, so you're planning your rock star career. I love that. I think we all dreamt of that at one point,
right? Yeah,
yeah. And then reality sets in that you can't sing, and I certainly can't play a guitar. But were you involved in any sports or anything like that to keep you busy in high school?
I played soccer. I ran track. I tried football 1 year and it did not go well. So soccer, most of I was definitely running a lot, and therefore, and that kind of, would play a role because I get into the Army and we run a lot, and then you get into, wanting to get into the FBI, and you knew that you had to run, and that was my way of exercising, was running. But I didn't have a lot of coordination, or there's a theme here. I didn't have a lot of skills. Whether it was music or organized sports, but running I was decent at, and that kind of propelled me from an athletic perspective.
Well, I think by the time we get to the end of your story, we're going to find out what you excel in, because you had a very successful career with your bureau. But now, when you went to college, where did you go?
Westchester University. It was it's in Chester County, Pennsylvania. It's about 30 miles west of Philadelphia. So it kind of grew up in the Philadelphia metropolitan area. Westchester is where the Philadelphia Eagles, my favorite football team, used to have their summer camp. And we would see and hear about the Eagles being around in the summer of my college, which was kind of, really cool as a fan, and being from that area. But then finished at Westchester, got a degree in criminal justice, and then went and my father had gone to St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia, and it's part of the Big Five in terms of basketball. It's a big basketball program, and it's up on a hill, so they call it Hawk Hill because it's the St. Joe's Hawks. And my dad went there as an undergrad. He actually had a track scholarship. So again, trying to follow in his footsteps, wanted to get into St. Joe's, and that's where I wanted to go. But my SAT didn't have a comma in it. And I got rejected. Yeah, I got rejected. And it really was kind of devastating, frankly. But Westchester took me, and I think when we go through life and things we want things to happen in a certain way, and when they don't, it's often how you react to those things, and what door closed, but what door can open that is changes the course of your life. And Westchester and meeting Joe definitely changed the course of the direction of my life. I can't imagine where it would have went if I'd gone to St. Joe's. I don't think it'd be the same.
Yeah. It's I read your book. I live by Murphy's Law, and it sounded like in your book that you do as well. So best laid plans, it doesn't matter.
Well, I think luck is funny. It's kind of funny because, and I think we'll talk about it when we talk about the case. Luck can work with you and luck can work against you, and you can't plan for luck. You can't strategize. Well, today we're going to get a lucky break, or tomorrow when we do this, we're going to get a lucky break. It just happens, and sometimes it works. It's sometimes luck is you're the windshield, and sometimes you're the bug. And
I've heard that in a long time.
Yeah, you got to take advantage of those opportunities when they're there. And I kind of like to say I'd rather be lucky than good. And but sometimes you got to when you get a lucky break, you've got to make something out of it. And I think that's probably an important takeaway.
Yeah, I was just looking up in your book here towards the end, and I'll be honest with you, I read so many. If our guests on the show have a book, I try to read it before we do the interview. I didn't read this much in college. It's not my forte, but whether luck or coincidence, quite honestly, I don't believe in either one, but I think it's more talent, and things happen for a reason. I think I could tell by the way you wrote your book that there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek, that you're not taking yourself too serious, which I appreciate, because when you do, that starts leading to a narcissistic type personality, and we're going to talk about a really narcissist here shortly. So now, when you were in college, did you continue to play sports in college?
I did not. No, I was, from sophomore year to the end, I was, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summertime. We would have ROTC class. We'd have PT during the week. So I had enough to keep me busy. And then I was working at UPS in the morning, came back from basic training and felt like I didn't have enough punishment. Let's go work at UPS at the preload shift. So I was loading the brown trucks, and the trucks roll out at 8:30. So you can imagine what time your wake up call is to go load those brown trucks. And I was getting up probably 4:30 Monday through Friday and working till about 9 o'clock and then going to class and really trying to stay awake. Especially at Christmas time. We called Christmas time the crush. And there were times where we started at 3 a.m. and they were unloading the semis, and you just the slide, as they called it, where the conveyor belts, you just boxes after boxes would just be coming, and it's just like, oh my, yeah, it was. I still have nightmares about it, but it paid really well, and I was a union. You get in the union once you get off through a certain period of time. It's a well-paying job. I had medical benefits on my own, so I could kind of take care of my own medical needs. It was, and it paid for my college. I got into management, lower level management, and it helped me pay for Westchester all by myself.
I've got a friend that I went to high school with. He's a year or two older than me, but he went into UPS straight out of, I think he went to college and then got in at the level that you started at and ended up in senior management and was stationed over in London for a while, running the offices in that part of Europe, and retired at a very young age. I mean, a whole lot younger than me. I mean, I think he retired like at 48 and did successful. He was very successful at it. So nothing to complain about there. When you went into Westchester, you said you majored in criminal justice. Did you start in criminal justice, or you developed that interest through your friend?
I think I initially was undeclared. And I think, I was undeclared. And then, probably that my spring semester of my freshman year, having that interaction with Joe and getting kind of where I was going to go in life, I think I declared as a criminal justice major.
Very good.
Pretty quickly.
How did Dad take that?
I think he was, that's a good question. He didn't have any issue with that. He wasn't like he was pushing me in either direction. At that point, once he lost his job and he was kind of unable to support me financially with college, I kind of became independent. After going through basic training and then, starting down a path where I was writing my own checks for college, what was he going to say? It's like, I'm doing this myself. I have no choice. So I don't remember him ever saying, you really should think about this and that. There is one conversation I do remember distinctly.
Oh,
I remind him about it every once in a while, maybe twice a year.
Like a good son.
Like a good son, I should. So my dad has a PhD in reverse psychology, and he said to me, I was in graduate school. I was already a police officer. I was a commissioned officer. I was on this track to become an FBI agent, but I wasn't yet eligible to apply. And he said to me, you're not what the FBI is looking for. I said, oh. And he said, they're looking for lawyers and accountants. I read an article, and you're neither. And I just kind of filed that away for the future. And, I got into the FBI, at 7-8 years in, and Louis Freeh, who was my director when I came into the FBI, he leaves the FBI. He writes a book. I went to a book signing. He actually signed the FISAs, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, warrants for Ana Montes that would go to the court and be signed by the judge. I told him that story, and I'm handing him the book for him to sign for my dad. And he says, Herb, your son's exactly who we were looking for. Louis Freeh. Merry Christmas, Dad.
Did you get him that book for Christmas?
I did. You better believe I gift wrapped that. And
that's funny. It's funny because my dad was a retired minister, Southern Baptist minister, so we grew up in a little bit of strict household. And then he and my uncle owned a carpeting store, and that's what I grew up working in. And when I just switched my majors to criminal justice, they weren't real happy about it. And I had been a cop for several years before he ever said, hey, son, I'm proud of what you're doing. Because I think he always thought, he quits everything he starts,
Yeah.
So, but that law enforcement thing, it's like a contagious bug. Once you get it, you can't get away from it.
It is. It's, there's I found, to me, there's a lot of joy in the chase, catching the bad guys or bad gals, as I think we'll talk about eventually. And and helping people and being part of this community of people that are trying to do good things and help people, make our community safer or our nation safer in some small way. So this, I always found it to be a very rewarding, challenging, but a very rewarding. It's not a job; it's a calling. It's really a calling.
I love exactly everything you said there, because you said what we kind of preach on here on Game of Crimes is, if it's not 99% of people that go into law enforcement go into it with the right reason of wanting to help others. We do have a very, very minuscule percentage, maybe not even 1% of jerks, but so does every job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our jerk level is probably lower than a lot of occupations out there. But I love the fact that you're saying that's the reason you want to do this, and that's the reason everybody wants to do it. Just help your fellow man. Now, when you were in a guard, did you ever deploy anywhere?
No, never did. Never did. I was in during the Second Gulf War in the National Guard. The Pennsylvania National Guard is a little different. That's where I enlisted in, and then I transferred once I got commissioned to the Maryland National Guard. Both have very proud lineages, but the Maryland National Guard is part of the 29th Infantry Division, and they literally hit the beaches of Normandy at Omaha. Wow. And so they had, we would have an annual banquet in Baltimore, and you'd have D-Day veterans from the division coming and standing up. And, as years went by, there was less and less, but there was such a proud, it felt really cool to be part of a unit that was so proud and had this history to it. Mm-hmm. And Pennsylvania just didn't quite have the same level of professionalism. So we were never deployed. And the Guard today is different than the Guard I was in, because, those folks, especially during the global war on terrorism, those citizen soldiers were deploying all the time. And, my hats are off to them and their service and having the difficulty of serving in harm's way in war zones, but also having a job at home and a family at home that's not used to this deployment life. At least if you're on active duty, it's part of the gig. Mm-hmm. And with a National Guard person, it became, I'm sure there were a lot of people that developed challenges as a result of just that lifestyle. It's almost like we knew this could happen, but maybe this wasn't exactly what we signed up for. But you've got orders to go to Iraq or Afghanistan, and there you go.
Yeah. I've got, my wife and I have a nephew by marriage who is the command sergeant major for the West Virginia National Guard. And he's also the senior enlisted man in the state. So he's got the highest ranking non-commissioned officer status for the whole state of West Virginia. Wow. And extremely proud of him. He deployed, I think he was in Iraq 3 different times. So, but that's a full-time job for him. He's military.
Right. Right.
Now, somewhere along the way here, you decided to jump in as a uniformed cop, right?
I did. I knew very quickly, so the Army's recruiting tagline when I was recruited was "Be all you can be." Mm-hmm. And I think it's actually come back to that, frankly. I really, when I knew that when I set my sights on law enforcement, this was what I wanted to do with my career. I wanted to be all I could be. And, no disrespect to any other federal law enforcement agency or any state or local, law enforcement agency. I felt if I was going to do this, I wanted to go to what I believed and still do was the best law enforcement agency in the world. And that was the FBI. So I kind of set my sights on that. And being in local law enforcement was a way to, build experience, develop skills while you're waiting to become eligible to get into the FBI, because it takes a little bit longer. They tend to hire you, in your later 20s, early 30s, after you've got maturity to you. Right. At least that was the FBI experience. Maybe the DEA, they were a little more open to, we'll give you the maturity. I don't know, but I don't know, but that was the FBI's, and it also competitiveness. I mean, I had a PhD in my class, a chemist. I wouldn't say he's a really smart guy. Doesn't mean he was the best at all the tactical kind of things, but like he still was a doctor, so you had to respect that. And I had a couple of Navy SEALs in my class, and a former CIA case officer who went back to was an FBI agent for a little while, and then went back to the CIA because he didn't like being an agent. It was an interesting class.
Was that a he or a she?
Yeah, it was interesting. He had been a case officer out doing the case officer work, and then didn't like it, and then he went back and forth a couple times.
Yeah, and the reason I was asking, we had a lady. I'm looking for her name here. I can never find anything when I want.
Tracy
Tracy
Weldon?
Walder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we had her on the show back. Gosh, when was that? It was March of 22.
Yeah.
She told us all about both of her careers there and the challenges that she faced, but also what she loved about serving her country. And that's what you're doing in law enforcement is even if you're a local police officer, you're still serving your country. You're doing what you can to help your fellow man. What agency or agencies did you go to work for?
I worked in 2 different small municipalities in Chester County. Coatesville, the city of Coatesville is where I started. And it's a town of, it's 1 square mile. I think it had maybe 30,000 residents. And it had the county's largest housing project, and its biggest open air drug market. Unfortunately, Coatesville is where most of the Section 8 folks tend to live, and they had a lot of drug activity and gang activity and all sorts of problems. I was there for about 2 years, and absolutely loved it. I loved working in Coatesville. It was challenging and rewarding. And difficult all at the same time. But I knew because
you said 30,000 people in 1 square mile.
Yeah, I think it's 30. It's a pretty congested town.
Wow.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I could go to my smartphone and give you a more accurate number.
That's all right.
But we worked. My partner and I worked in the East End, which is predominantly African American. I mean, we were one of the only couple of white guys that were in the neighborhood, and that's where the drug and the projects is where the drug activity. Where if you wanted to go buy crack, you could go buy crack, and we set up a sub station down there, and we're handing out baseball cards and stickers to kids, and then trying to make it harder to sell drugs on a corner in 8th and Diamond, and the philosophy, and it's kind of interesting because the challenge was to go after the drug trade. You're going to go after, young kids, and the parents and the grandparents, they had mixed feelings on that. There were shootings pretty common, and there's young kids, 7-year-old kids riding bicycles around these neighborhoods and trying to live in peace and safely. And then you had grandparents that are sitting on their front stoop trying to enjoy a warm, summer night. But if you want to, if we're going to arrest these guys and try to stop them from selling drugs, it caused a lot of issues. And, lifelong experiences, because I got to talk to and interact with all walks of life. And to do that in a real world versus in a class is just, it's you can't replace it.
Absolutely. And you know what, I'm guessing you feel the same as I do. When I was going through criminal justice in college, the professors who had been on the street and worked uniform, you had the immense respect for them versus those who were just academics and had really never even been in a fight in their entire lives.
Yep. And you get a little bit from both. I did learn a lot from the theoretical, the understanding of crime and where it comes from and why. But you're right. The practitioners, they've been there, they've done that. So I left there to go to a West Whiteland Township. Vastly different. We're talking upper middle class. There's a mall, there's shopping, there's a country club. And the main reason I left, it was a salary bump. Frankly, it was a better paying job, but it also, because I had started my master's degree and I was paying for it myself, West Whiteland was going to pay for my master's degree.
Oh, that's nice.
I couldn't resist. I was 3 classes in at $3,000 a class, and I had 7 more to go, and it was kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So thank you to the citizens of West Whiteland for paying for 7 of my 10 graduate classes, and then I appreciated them by leaving and going to the FBI.
Did you have to, for your master's, did you have to do a thesis?
I did not. St. Joe's did not have that as an option. But to your other point, we had some really good full-time academics. My favorite class at St. Joe's was ethics. I'm telling you the truth, it was taught by a nun. And it was my favorite class because she was so. Just think about what you would think a nun would teach about ethics. And the class we were, a lot of us were already cops or probation officers. We were already working in the criminal justice system. You would think that she would be pretty opinionated and this is what your ethics should be. And I'm a nun. And it was not anywhere near that. It was very, let's talk about it from this perspective. It was very, very, just a great environment. But I had two teachers there that were retired FBI agents. My first class at St. Joe's was taught by a guy named Ed Smith, who just passed away at 88. And it means a lot to me because it brings me back full circle. He taught terrorism. And he was talking about jihad in 1994, well before 9/11. So it's like I'm learning the 6 tenets of Islam from this guy who was a retired agent, and just my mind's being blown by, this is what I want to be. Like, I want to be this guy who is intelligent, speaks a different, he spoke fluent Spanish, just worldly, well-read, intelligent guy. And by the way, he was also an FBI agent, so he put people in jail. And that really kind of became a model for what I wanted to do, or at least try to accomplish as an agent.
Very cool. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with being proud of your agency. I'm just as proud of DEA as you are of the FBI. The difference is that in DEA, I'm not sure that we ever mature no matter what age we attain. So we're still having fun, or I don't know. If you ask my wife, she says I'm never going to grow up. Now, during this time, so in Weiss Wetland, were you working narcotics there? Was that a problem over there or no?
No, I was a patrol officer, and a lot of the kids from Coatesville would come to West Whiteland, to the mall and to the stores, and unfortunately a lot of them would steal things, and we'd have the retail theft part of that. We didn't have a lot of drugs other than the drugs that were coming in. And I remember my first police report about a call at the local hotel, I think it was a Holiday Inn, about drugs, marijuana, and my police report sounded like I was working on it. It was like a Wikipedia. I'm there teaching, because I came from Coatesville and I've seen drugs, and this is my sergeant was like, "What the hell is this? Like, we all know what marijuana is, dude. Like, just write the facts. You don't need to, give us a lesson here, schoolboy." It's like, okay, I'm sorry. My apologies. So,
well, a question for you: in Coatesville, how many police officers did you have?
We had about 20.
And how many had any or a little bit of college or college degrees? Anybody with masters?
Yeah, I think they were on one hand. No master's degrees, no. Bachelor's degrees, there was less than 5 of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in West Whiteland,
got a little better. No one with one guy with a master's degree. He was my training officer. And then there were probably 6 or 7 that had undergraduate degrees, and about the same amount of people, about 23 to 25.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, not a lot of people taking advantage of. I mean, the contract that we had between the police officers and the township was that they would pay for any class. Like, I presume you could go, get a medical degree. I mean, at some point in time, someone's going to say, like, what's this going towards for police work? But the contract was really poorly written for the township perspective, and no one was taking advantage of it. And that was a shame and kind of a crime. Like, you're losing free money here. Go get an education, go get something that you can, will do something with. And a lot of guys just weren't really motivated by that, but that's fine. It's their decision.
Yeah, so you don't know this about my background, but I started as a uniform officer in Southern West Virginia in 1975. And there was the local state college, Bluefield State College, which I eventually graduated from. We had a 35-man department, and because of the criminal justice program at the state college, it was either 21 or 23 of the 35 officers that either had an associate's or a bachelor's degree.
Oh, wow.
For this little sleepy town in Southern West Virginia, extremely well educated, which, it's got nothing to do with your story. I'm just kind of proud of that fact. So
but that's actually really important. And I think it's a good point for your audience, because I think there's a tremendous value in education. And I think that, when you think about most police organizations, you get to the state level and you kind of have to have a college degree or you're not going to be competitive. And I think it's so important because you get a perspective that you walk in on the job, and that doesn't mean you know more than you're a cop that doesn't have a degree, but I feel like you're better prepared. And I do think that it'd be nice at some point in time if local law enforcement would make that a requirement. But it's hard to staff police officers now as it is, given kind of events. Therefore, you can't really put too much of that kind of requirement. Most departments.
Did you finish your master's before you applied for the bureau?
I did, and it's I still had time because I think you needed 3 years. I wasn't quite ready to apply for the FBI. I wasn't quite eligible, and I went and I took the LSATs again because the contract was like, we'll pay for any class. And I got into it's called Widener University Law School. I think it's now called Delaware School of Law. And I got in, and I started my first semester part-time in law school, and I hated it. It was civil procedure and torts. Like maybe if we started with criminal procedure, I would have been more interested, but I hated it. And but it was getting paid for. And it's funny, the chief called me in. I'm halfway through the first semester, and he says, "Hey, the FBI was here today for your background investigation." And I honestly did not know. I had obviously filled out the SF-86, the kind of background investigation, but I assumed that was the next step. But they don't call you and say, "Hey, we're going to start your background investigation." So this was actually news to me. And he said, "You're in law school, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah. He said, "So let me get this straight. Is it your impression that you're going to finish the semester, give us a bill for," I said, $7,000. He goes, "Yeah, it's $7,000. We'll pay that bill, and then you're going to resign and go to the FBI." And I said, "Well, I thought that was possible. I mean, that's a potential timeline." He said, "Yeah, we're gonna fight you on that." I said, "Well, look, I'm just Pete. I'm not the union president. I don't run the contract. Like, what do you want me to do?" I said, "I can't drop out now. I owe $3,500. And he said, "If you drop out today, I will pay that $3,500. If you go to the end of the semester, I'm going to fight you." And I dropped out that day and was one of the happy, outside of my 3 kids being born. And the arrest of Ana Montes, it's the 5th happiest day of my life is when I dropped out of law school. It was just so, and it's funny because I actually would have finished, I didn't start Quantico until the end of May. So I would have got my first year of 3 years of law school done, but I didn't need it. I really didn't need it. I was already on my way and but it's such a relief to drop out of law school.
That was pretty easy as a decision to make there. Let's see, drop out and pay nothing or stick around and
maybe that is my skill. I can make those quick decisions pretty easy.
There you go. Now, I got to ask you a question. Were you watching Miami Vice back during this time? I mean, you've been working narcotics.
Yeah, actually younger. I was younger. It was that was early high school. Oh yeah, my best friend and I, Tony, he was Crockett and I was Tubbs.
There you go.
And it was just I loved it, and the fact that my parents let me watch it was you talk about your upbringing. My father was pretty not Baptist minister, but pretty disciplined in terms of what we can and cannot watch, and that was him starting to allow me to watch things that were a little beyond PG probably. So yeah, I loved Miami Vice.
That series probably had more to do with bringing candidates into law enforcement than any other show's ever been on TV. I loved it.
And the soundtrack, from a musician perspective, the soundtrack was just brilliant.
It was very motivating, wasn't it?
It was. I'll tell you a little secret. I was down in Miami. I've been down there a couple times since I retired. And I fly in the airport for book events and book stuff. And I get my rental car, which is never anything to think of. It's usually a 4-door POS. And I attach my phone and I start playing Miami Vice soundtrack as I'm driving through Miami in my rental car, thinking that I'm in a Ferrari in Crockett. And it's like, because you're driving the same scenes that you saw in the TV show. So great pull there. That's, yeah,
absolutely.
love Miami Vice.
When I graduated academy, in '87, my first post was Miami. It was still the Wild West down there. And it was,
Wow.
I tell you, it was like being a kid in a candy store.
Yeah.
Loved it down there. Okay, so now you're going through your background investigation. Are you married yet, or does that come later in life?
I was married in November, got married in November of 1995. So yes, I had already been married when they started my background investigation. And I was very clear with my fiance, then wife, that this was where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. And we could move to Phoenix, we could move to Anchorage, Alaska. I don't know where we're going. So she was along for the ride, no doubt.
Got it. Okay, so now we got you in the academy. So I went through the DEA Academy in 1987, and that's when we were actually staying. We were using the FBI Academy's rooms, the bunk rooms, everything. Going through the little gerbil cage tunnels every day, hermetically sealed in there.
It's like Silence of the
kind
Lambs.
Of crazy. Did you, while you were in the academy, did you ever have to write any memos explaining your actions, good or bad?
No,
really?
I did not. No. Well, it's 1998. So it's a long time ago, almost 26 years. I don't remember having to do that. I do remember failing the first legal test.
Really?
Yeah, I did. And my professor, the teacher, called me in, and you failed and remedial. And there, obviously you didn't fail with one question, but the one question that would have passed me was, how many people does it take to indict somebody? And I told him, I said, I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm going to walk in, present my case, and if there's 8 people or 80 people there, the person's either going to get indicted or not. Like, how do I care? Like, why do I care how many people? And he's like, because I'm telling you have to care. It's a test question. Fine. So I learned how many people it took to indict somebody, and I got through legal again. And I don't remember having to write a memo about my actions, good or bad. No.
I mean, just, having read your book and see the way it's written and talking to you here for just a little bit, I got a feeling you might like to stir the pot just a little bit, just to agitate people and see what kind of reaction you can get out of them. Is that true? Come on, you know how to do it.
Yeah, there's some truth to that.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
No. My significant other, my wife and I got divorced, and I have a significant other. She met somebody I worked with who retired, and he said to her, Pete, people don't really manage Pete. They give him a left boundary and a right boundary, and they hope he kind of stays in between that. And I thought he was kidding around, but I think maybe you guys are onto something. Maybe
he hit the nail on the head there, did he?
Yeah.
It's like watching somebody drive, especially I live in Orlando, and the drivers here, I was a cop for 38 years. I've never seen such bad drivers in my life. Every single time you go out, you see something different, and you're just like, what the hell were they thinking? But you can tell the people on their phone because they gravitate between that right white line and that left white line, don't they?
Yep.
There goes Pete. I like it. So now, when you went to the academy, did you know where you were going to get posted when you went in, or how did you guys find out what your new posting was going to be upon graduation?
We found out 6 weeks in. So,
and did you get to fill out a? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we had to rank all the 56 field offices in terms of our order of preference.
All 56?
Yeah. It gets hard, like, in between number 6 and 50. It becomes like, I don't like, okay, is St. Louis better than Kansas City? I don't know.
My gosh.
Yeah, maybe that was a writing exercise that to your talk, your question before. I knew that I didn't want to go to New York City. Big city, a lot of people, a lot of traffic, high cost of living. I'm processing out of the Philadelphia division, so I felt like they could look at this and go, yeah, he could do New York City. And I was like, no. I wanted to get out of the state of New Jersey and didn't want Newark either. I knew I wasn't going to go back to Philadelphia. Going back to where you came from was incredibly rare and almost never happened. So I kind of looked at the Washington, D.C. area, and I said, it's 2.5 hours from home. It's a big office, for the FBI. A lot of people there. Let me put that number 1. I'll put Baltimore number 2, and then Philadelphia 3 to kind of give them the message, like, I want to stay on the 95 corridor.
Mm-hmm.
And then literally Newark and New York City were 55 and 56. And as we say, the monkeys in the dart with the dartboard got me the Washington field office, and it was life changing for me. It really changed the course of my life.
Absolutely. It's you even though you've got experience. How many years experience did you have as a local officer before you joined the bureau?
Just five.
5. But still, that's 5 years on the street. That's a good time to learn how to handle yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Learn that you can't believe anything that anybody says on the street. Everybody's going to lie to you, no matter what it is. It can be a simple speeding ticket, and they're going to tell you they're not going to own up to it most of the time.
Yep.
So you come out, you're at the academy. Now, so you go to the bureau, and you guys have different squads. They were responsible for different crimes, right?
Right.
And what was your preference? What were you hoping to get when you got to the D.C. office?
Oh, the cool stuff. I wanted to work gangs and drugs and homicides and, organized crime, the stuff the reason why people join the FBI, I wanted to kick indoors and wrestle with bad guys on the streets, just at the federal level, maybe a little more class. I don't know. I mean, I wanted to do the cool stuff. I had 2 criminal justice degrees. I had been in the Army, but the infantry, it's not like I was in military intelligence. I had been a cop, and I thought the FBI would look at my resume and say, well, he's going to go work drugs or gangs. And like, no, that's not what they said. They said, you're going to work Cuban counterintelligence. And I was floored, frankly. I had no idea what the hell that was. What do you mean Cuban? What is, and it, again, this is pre 9/11. So we had 1 day of national security training that included counterterrorism, counterintelligence, counterespionage. It probably included a little bit of cyber, whatever that would look like in 1998. So they, this is a cram 1 day. This is what you're going to need to know about about national security cases. So counterintelligence was maybe a 1-hour presentation of that 1 day.
Wow, that sounds like just one of the classes. Let's just get through this and go to lunch.
Right, exactly. Yeah, maybe I have to work this. Hopefully I don't, because I'm going to go work bank robberies and, cool stuff, because I was a cop. I mean, of course, the FBI is so brilliant. That's what they'll do, is maybe have me doing the cool stuff. And they had other plans for me.
They always do, it seems like.
Yeah.
Hey, players, this is the end of part 1. As you know, part 2 comes out tomorrow on a Tuesday. In the meantime, on social media, go and check us out on X at Game of Crimes, and on Facebook and Instagram at Game of Crimes Podcast. Also on Facebook, type in Game of Crimes fan page and join us for some more fun. Our website is gameofcrimespodcast.com. We've got a lot more information there, including all our episodes, the book list, which contains the books written by our guests, Game of Crimes merchandise, and a lot more. In the meantime, everybody stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow for part 2.